The US could lift sanctions on Russia in exchange for a nuclear arms reduction deal. That's what Donald Trump said during his first interview with the British media since winning the US presidential election in November. Trump said, quote, "Let's see if we can make some good deals with Russia," adding that in his opinion, nuclear weapons should be reduced. Well, RT's Anastasia Churkina reports with more from London.
This would certainly indicate quite a major shift in policy, considering the state of the relationship between the U.S. and Russia in these last years of the Obama administration. In fact, Trump has said that in exchange to a nuclear arms deal, the lifting of sanctions against Russia is a possibility. And this, of course, comes after last year Russia suspended nuclear cooperation with the U.S. because of the sanctions the United States had imposed against it over the situation in Ukraine. Back at the time, Russia cited the threat to strategic stability posed by the hostile actions of the U.S. against Russia and the inability of the U.S. to deliver on the obligation to dispose of excessive weapons plutonium. This was what forced Russia's hand in that decision. So that's something that's been announced by Trump. But of course, we have to remember that Obama in his day had talked about the so-called перезагрузка, reset of ties, and this was something that was seen as a hopeful, positive step between the relationship between the two countries. So in this case, we'll have to wait and see if these promises are actually delivered. Now, we have to say that despite this positive light in terms of the upcoming relationship with Russia, some media headlines decided to pick on the negative along the lines of Trump condemns Russian military campaign in Syria and says Putin's nuclear arsenal should be reduced. Well, that's not really verbatim what was said, was it? So another issue that was raised in this interview was the issue of trust. Trump was asked who he trusts more, Angela Merkel or Vladimir Putin, considering the good working relationship the two have with each other. And he said, first and foremost, I trust both of them. Let's see how long this goes on for. Maybe it won't last for long. In terms of Angela Merkel's policies on immigration, he did say that allowing over 1 million people to come to Germany was a mistake that Angela Merkel carried out. In fact, he called it a, quote, very catastrophic mistake, and that was taking all of these illegals. Now, and he also added that huge immigration was one of the elements that caused Brexit. Let's take a listen.
I think Brexit's going to end up being a great thing. People don't want to have other people coming in and destroying their country. I thought the UK was so smart in getting out.
So Trump has indicated that he thinks the Brexit trend is something that might be followed within the rest of the EU. And he's also said that he is looking forward to seeing Theresa May visit him in Washington as soon as he takes office to find a good deal. And he said a good deal quickly is something he's looking forward to make Brexit a great thing. This particular exclusive first UK interview aside, Donald Trump is continuing to stir the waves between himself and the media, of course, in the press conference of last week that created so much controversy where he accused CNN of fake news. He continued this topic on Twitter just on Sunday, where he said that the intelligence chief behind the dossier that created such a stir in the international community, as well as the media, should apologize.
Well, let's discuss this further with our guest, Dr. Johannes Hübner, an Austrian MP. Dr. Johannes, good to see you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Now, if we can jump straight into this interview with The Times, the president-elect suggested sanctions against Russia could be lifted if deals between the two countries are struck, including a nuclear arms reduction. Do you think that's a realistic possibility, in your opinion?
Well, it could be a realistic proposition. A realistic proposition. The question is if what Trump himself called the deep net in the United States allows such a change in the foreign policy. It was for the last years, it was a core element of American policy to try to isolate Russia and to try to bring a regime change in Moscow. So a change in the policy would be a 180-degree change. Accommodating Russia, cooperating with Russia would be a total deviation. So it's up to see if the people who run the show in the States behind the scenery allow such a change to happen. this is something I can't give you a prediction what will happen.
Conflict of interest.
Now, these sanctions on Russia, they were originally put in place because of the situation in Ukraine. So why should the nuclear sphere have anything to do with getting them lifted?
Well, because the sanctions have nothing to do with Ukraine or with Crimea. This was just the pretext to execute a policy which, to my opinion, was planned for years before. As you could see from by all these small attacks and hassles against Russia, starting from Sochi, the almost boycott of the Olympic Games, to all that things around Khodorkovsky, you could see that pressure and isolation against and attempt to isolate Russia we are building already, I would say, since 2010, 2011. It was clearly visible, and what happened in Ukraine and Crimea was just a pretext to start the sanctions that were asked for by the power brokers long ago.
Now, we've seen some British media outlets focus on Trump's condemnation of Russia's military campaign in Syria, even though Trump has spent far longer condemning the US's involvement there. So why do you think there's a change of focus here?
A change in Trump's focus? Well, the change of focus is because Trump, I think he honestly wants to find a way to cooperate and to accommodate Russia. Syria, well, he has few options. The Americans definitely won't be eager to step into the quagmire of Syria. So they want to keep their boots off the ground, and they don't want to get more involved with bombing campaigns. So I don't think they are quite unhappy about Russia stopping the radical and Islamists in this country. They don't want to support Assad, or they don't want to say it's fine that Assad stays. They won't say this. But I think they are quite happy to have the status quo ante, the status before 2011, 2012 reinstated in Syria, and so they are slowly changing course.
OK, Dr. Johannes Hübner, Austrian MP, thank you for joining us on RT International. We appreciate it.
Not at all. It was a pleasure.